I'm aware or have heard that DEA has a new proposed rule, which critics are telling me is no better and maybe is worse in some respects. They might require doctors to go to some kind of a central database. In other words, they're trying to cut down on the possibility of overprescribing or doctor shopping. There's a school of thought that testosterone shouldn't even be a controlled substance.
Right, it's ridiculous.
That the reason that it is has more to do with cheating in sports, and I question whether the way that we're really dealing with testosterone is the right way. We sort of have a prohibitionist approach for people who want it non-medically or at least cosmetically. Prohibition didn't work with alcohol, right?
I'm Dr. Thomas O'Connor, a lifelong powerlifter, board-certified physician, and published academic author. I've taken care of thousands of men on testosterone and steroids, and now I use my media appearances and this YouTube channel to provide education and harm reduction. Subscribe now so I can help you stay strong and healthy. Attorney Rick Collins, welcome once again.
How are you, Doc? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Rick. All right, this is a big day right here, and we're going to talk about the updates from the federal government, the DEA, regarding telehealth in testosterone clinics. What are they doing?
Right. So, well, first, thanks for having me on, Doc. I always appreciate our dialogue and our discussions here. So let's do a little bit of a recap background, right? So 2008, the law was changed to require a face-to-face, an in-person physical examination for prescribing a controlled substance. So before you prescribe a controlled substance, you got to have a physical exam of the patient. And that was because of a death, an overdose death, very unfortunate death of a young man who had gone to like a rogue internet pharmacy and obtained opiates, which led to his demise. And so Congress enacted this law really to deal with rogue internet pharmacies, specifically involving opiates, not TRT. But because testosterone is a Schedule III drug, a controlled substance federally and in most states, it kind of gets lumped in, right? So that law then would require a physical examination before any kind of telehealth type prescription could be issued for TRT. Then along comes 2020, right? We all remember what 2020 was like. And because of that public health emergency, the law was waived. There was a waiver to allow for more flexibility for people in rural areas, people who couldn't leave their homes. Obviously, it was a very different place for the country. And so those folks were able to access the prescription with much more flexibility than prior to that, right? And then last year, the DEA, which is Drug Enforcement Administration, which is in charge of controlled substances at the federal level, distribution and possession. So the DEA said, well, it's time for us to end these flexibilities, stop the waiver, and get back to what the law was before. But of course, at that point, there was tremendous pushback, mostly from folks in the pain management and addiction area who are like, well, wait a minute. You can't just go back to that. There's a lot of people who are going to be very negatively impacted by that. And so DEA started proposing a rule that would be kind of a compromise last year. There were a variety of meetings that were held and listening sessions by DEA. Ultimately, they couldn't arrive at something that worked for everybody, so they kicked the can down the road. That waiver, those flexibilities have remained in place, and they will until December 31st of this year. So we're a few months away from the end of those flexibilities. Oh. And obviously, those flexibilities not only affect opiates and addiction, medications, but also obviously affect testosterone in the telehealth context. And so I'm aware or have heard that DEA has a new proposed rule, which they think would be better, but which critics are telling me is no better and maybe is worse in some respects. Whether that will actually go through or whether the can will get kicked down the road further remains to be seen. We'll probably hear over the next month or two a little bit more about that. So keep your ears open for what's going on. But that's the update on telehealth with respect
What
to
are the rules?
controlled
Okay, so
substances.
can you give us some intel on what those rules, those changes may be?
Yeah, so there's nothing really publicly disclosed that I'm aware of, but obviously what they would try to focus on is setting up some sort of registry of all the doctors who would be doing it. They might require doctors to go to some kind of a central database to see, hey, has this patient gotten a prescription for a drug of abuse, an opiate? In another state or from a doctor. In other words, they're trying to cut down on the possibility of overprescribing or doctor shopping, which in the telehealth context, is something that DEA is concerned about.
They do that. It's beyond the scope of today's interview, but they're kind of doing that on a state level, with opioids and controlled drugs technically already.
Sure.
But when it comes to testosterone, and I know that, the lighter controlled, there's the controlled 2 drugs, right, that are the real opioids, right, the oxycodones.
Well, interestingly, testosterone is a Schedule 2 drug in the state of New York. Only state where it's Schedule 2 and not
That's
Schedule
right.
3.
That's
something to be aware of. Yeah, a little wacky.
We have to write code F on the prescriptions. Mm-hmm. Code F, and I've never really known. That's how we get around.
So yeah. Well, there's a school of thought that testosterone shouldn't even be a controlled substance.
Right, it's ridiculous.
That the reason that it is has more to do with cheating in sports and the Ben Johnson scandal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics and things like that than it really does on protecting public health. That's that's certainly a point of view that I've heard a lot. I question whether the way that we're really dealing with testosterone is the right way. We sort of have a prohibitionist approach for people who want it non-medically or at least cosmetically, and I'm not sure that prohibition didn't work with alcohol, right? It was the rise of Al Capone and bathtub gin and all these horrible things. If there's a demand, there's going to be a supply, right?
Right, NASCAR.
Basic economic rule, yes.
So, but what do you think? So we don't really know. We know it's going to be potentially draconian stuff, like, really putting limits back and even beyond, like, hey, you have to have an in-person visit every year, every 6 months, whatever this frequency. And then it's going to be things like, checking the registries and things that are not realistically, that caregivers can really do. And it's interesting that there's this bedfellows, as you and I have talked about, where there's the addiction medicine, which is, Suboxone and other medications. What's the other medication? I'm just blanking. What's the other medication?
Well, there's buprenorphine and there's other medicines, sure, that are sort of treatments to addiction, but there's also pain management medicines. There are opiates for pain management, and if you're in a rural area and you're in pain, you may not be able to get to a doctor. Certainly during the pandemic.
Right. So buprenorphine. I mean, I don't practice primary care medicine. It's been 5 years or so.
Understood.
I deal with just steroids, testosterone, and ABCDs in the heart, kidney. It's really what I'm good for. So let's think about it though, Rick. I mean, pandemic comes, telemedicine opens up. If you're a surgeon, you're having a tough time because you need an operating room and a lot of staff, right? And we got to. So it was my surgical friends.
Elective surgeries went out the window for a while. Sure,
man, those guys. But they got taken care of from the Fed. They really did. I mean, they got money. I know these guys, right? And they're most of them. They don't have to pay it back. The SBA loans are different. We don't need to go into that. But it's really interesting. So got them through. Surgeons took a beating. I mean, elective orthopedic guys, they were broke for. I mean, like there was no elective knee surgeries. I mean, you either took care of life and death stuff in
Right.
the OR, and that's really, people don't know that. So let's look what happened. So meanwhile, so you have this huge shortage of primary care doctors. People don't know. Massive shortage, not looming, here today, here yesterday. I mean, this has been going on for 20 years. All of a sudden, so you're not a surgeon. You don't need to really touch a patient. You work with your ears. You hear. How do you feel? And you look at labs. This is telemedicine. 90% of internal medicine is history. You don't need to touch the patient. It doesn't mean the patient doesn't need to be seen or evaluated for vital signs and for studies, but your patient can coordinate that. Okay, so it opens up from addiction medicine to depression, ADHD. That's a controlled 2 drug, Rick. Those are controlled 2 drugs. Those are amphetamines, Adderall and methylphenidate. I mean, this opened up. Is there always some abuse? I mean, but who knows? What the numbers are? Maybe we should see some numbers from these people, from the data guys at the Fed, and then the states independently, and how many people were bad, how many hurt. But then testosterone is exploded for men, and not just men, for women. So what do we think, Rick, that the help? Is the help really a huge number? And then what's the hurt? And forget the politics of cheating, because we're not giving freaking steroids to MLB guys, over the internet,
Right.
So
Sure.
and I'm not going to pump my own business, Testosteronology, that I'm training all these people, and we're raising a standard of care because we are. But it's like here's the common sense. You need brick and mortar, and to some degree, brick and mortar. You need to see doctors. You could take a blood pressure at home, though. Your blood pressure at home now, from the experts in hypertension, have said your 24/7 ambulatory blood pressure is more meaningful and important based on studies than what you are in a doctor's office. Okay, so why wouldn't we utilize
the old white coat syndrome?
Come
right?
on, Rick,
White coat
stay
syndrome.
home.
Sure. Yeah.
Stay home. Do your ABCDs. We have massive obesity. We have these therapy centers. Again, they're helping a lot of people. The Fed has to show that they're going to be paternal. We understand that, and protective. We all agree. That's our government. And the states are going to be interacting with it, obviously, as you've taught me, that really the medical laws are coming down to state and state, state dependent. I mean, look at the abortion stuff. We don't need to go into it, but it's like there's federal level, there's state levels. Okay, so this is going to be a similar thing, but it's like, it's going to be amazing. People need to be cared for. Okay. They don't have access to a doctor anymore, Rick. That pisses me off. There's no, I'm an ex-concierge doctor, which I'm kind of embarrassed for, right? That I was this, VIP doctor for so many years in Connecticut. And I took care of little old ladies. I mean, it wasn't $2,000 a year. It's not a lot of money, but a lot of people can't afford it. So let me put this onus on you. Do you think it's right? Do you think it's right that people can just get testosterone? Let's just forget all the other drugs from a clinic and potentially never be seen by a doctor, because men, if they're left to their own devices, they won't go for freaking labs. They won't be seen, and it's going to be bad. I'm just saying it's true.
Yeah. Well, I think a conservative endocrinologist, and I'm the lawyer, you're the doctor, so you can answer this better than I can. But I would think that a conservative endocrinologist with a very different mindset would probably say that a testosterone prescription should not be issued without some sort of digital rectal exam to look for a prostate potential, a prostate the size of a watermelon, right? And the and
especially
maybe
when you're an older guy, when you're older, that's a no-brainer.
Who knows, right? Yeah, and maybe some sort of testicular examination to make sure that you don't have a growth the same size on your testes. Right. So yeah, I think that would mitigate toward it's better medicine, certainly at a minimum, to do a physical examination before prescribing, a hormone like that. And some of the online clinics do that. They affiliate with local doctors so that at a minimum, you'd have somebody taking a look at your prostate, your testes, to be able to make sure. Sure.
It doesn't. So here's what I'm saying. It doesn't. We're moving into a realm where we're utilizing synergistic technologies and doctors and caregivers and nurse practitioners. So, hey, we can do the history because medicine, 90% of medicine is history. 10% is going to be some vital signs and physical exam. So do I have to put the finger in the rear end? Do I have to check the blood pressure? Do I have to check? No, absolutely not. But it needs to, and this is my rubric. I just make sure that it happens. I mean, but these clinics, though, again, the good clinics I think are appropriate, and the bad clinics are just out there to make money, and they don't give a shit.
Right.
And they'll just give you refills if you just pay the money for the bottle.
Yeah,
that's what the Fed's up against.
Any doctor, whether you're part of an online telehealth model or otherwise, you got to practice good medicine, right? You got to work in the best interest of the patient. I guess to sort of look at the alternative from a harm reduction standpoint is, as you know, I represent a lot of folks in the testosterone, anabolic, sports nutrition realms. So I have clients who are selling vitamins and herbs, but I also represent people who are in the dark side of the industry, the underground labs, right? The folks who are selling anabolic steroids online without even a medical veneer. I mean, just selling steroids on Instagram. So I would say that the more we can position this model toward doctors, pharmacists, medications that are not made in somebody's basement, esterified in a kitchen somewhere from, a package, a kilo of powder that came from China. The more we can steer this in the direction of legitimacy, you do reduce the harms, right? Because, we don't want certainly a 16 or 17-year-old kid to go online, find a source for some trenbolone. And there was recently a big article I posted on my Instagram. You can check the link to it about teens and trenbolone. So trenbolone has become sort of like the cachet drug du jour, right? So for kids, they're getting a hold of this, and they're not getting it from clinics. They're not getting it from telehealth sources. They're getting it from underground lab people. Right. And there's not only is there no physical exam, but there's absolutely no bar towards screening of any kind whatsoever.
Right. None of us.
So that's something we want to discourage. Although I will say that there is a philosophy that looks at what role has the government played in contributing to this problem, not solving the problem, but contributing to the problem. Correct. Because again, when you make it difficult for doctors to prescribe a drug, when you disincentivize the drug companies from producing a drug, when you limit the availability of the drug in pharmacies, what happens? If there is a demand for that drug, there will be alternative supplies that appear, and those alternative supplies will be fraught with many, many more problems, dangers, and risks than the legitimate source ever would have.
People need to hear this, Rick, right from your mouth. I mean, and the government, which is us, they need to hear this and realize we're not just a couple of guys, in the underground anymore. They need to really hear this. That
there's definitely policy. Right. There's policies that work, and there's certainly policies that could be improved. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement at the governmental level in regulating this area.
All right, Rick, next piece, Vitamin Shoppe. What are these guys doing? It's kind of like the Budweiser when they put the. I mean, but it's like, do they get the? I have to say, just as an analog,
Yeah.
I mean, do these guys get the memo that they're going to spend a lot of money on this? And but they're going into Vitamin Shoppes, going into opening up a huge online TRT for just oral testosterone. It's kind of freakish. Have they done their homework? Do they know the feds?
So let's
Why would they do this right
let me
now?
preface it by let me preface it by saying this. I know the guys, some of the guys over at Vitamin Shoppe. I like the guys over at Vitamin Shoppe. In my sports nutrition capacity, I deal with Vitamin Shoppe on behalf of my own clients who are brands in the sports nutrition space. So I like those guys, for starters. To put it a little bit into context, I think that Vitamin Shoppe, as an online retailer, made the decision to begin to get involved in linking up with a online pharmacy to prescribe drugs that would improve health, right? And the
Okay.
big one right now, of course, are GLP-1 drugs, right?
Okay.
The semaglutide and the GLP, right? So obviously we've got an epidemic of obesity. We've got 67% of the country is now overweight or obese. Type 2 diabetes, through the roof, right? So the, whether it's, Wegovy or Manjaro,
Right.
or
Absolutely.
Ozempic, all the same GLP-1 drug. Bottom line is, this is a lifesaver for a lot of people. Not
Absolutely.
everybody, and certainly there are people who are abusing it, who don't need it, who shouldn't be on it, and every drug has side effects,
Right.
for sure. 100%, including testosterone. Everything does.
Right.
But Vitamin Shoppe partnered with a pharmacy called Whole Health RX. Health RX, and this was announced in May, right? So in May, they said, hey, we're going to partner with this online clinic, and we're going to set up an infrastructure so that people can get semaglutide and products and other medications through us, through our partnership online. So that was in May. Then last week, right, hot off the press, bing, 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 right? So, news alert. Last week, they announced the next step in this evolution from purely a vitamin and supplement company to this new model. And that's when they announced that they would be linking up, that the Whole Health RX model would bring in this manufacturer of a new drug called Marius Pharmaceuticals.
Right.
Marius Pharmaceuticals who have a patented drug called Kysotrex, which is an oral testosterone product. You take it twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
The website says it goes through the lymphatic system, so it doesn't have the liver problems you would ordinarily say would be attached to the ordinary methylated oral drug, the C17 for your. I'm sure many of your viewers are pretty savvy in this area, and they know what C17 alkylation is. So this is a drug that doesn't go that way, and so this next step. This is, as I see it, sort of the first time that we see Vitamin Shoppe and its Whole Health RX partnership now bringing out a controlled drug.
Wow.
Now we've got a Schedule 3 controlled substance. Now, for all the circling back to the first part of our conversation, right? So we're in this place where there is uncertainty about what the long-term rules will be in online telehealth prescribing of controlled substances, including this new product as a testosterone product. So I have to think that the lawyers over at Vitamin Shoppe are aware of the uncertainty factor, and so they're jumping in but I would have to think or hope that they have contingencies laid out for the various restriction possibilities that may come
Right.
either before December 31st, or if it gets kicked, the can gets kicked down again, maybe December 31st of 2025. We don't know those yet. But I guess it's to build the brand and to,
Right.
get some traction, and then adapt to the changing rules as they evolve.
I think, just as we're thinking about this and discussing it, my mind's moving. I think, what they're doing, they said it's going to be oral testosterone undecanate. You are right, obviously. It's not 17 alpha alkylated. It's not a hepatotoxic drug. It's runs through lymphatics. It works quite well. It's interesting that it's quite expensive. There's a couple of other brands. There's a couple of other in America, oral, same exact drug, but different manufacturers that are out there, right, in this country. And it's just something that hasn't really taken off well because A, it's very expensive. B, it's the compliance is tough because you take it twice a day. Although the compliance is great for someone who doesn't want to inject or get the pellets.
Sure.
Or doesn't want to do the topical.
A lot of needle phobic people out there.
Needle phobic. And if you have children,
there's a stigma attached to it.
Say if you're a 35-year-old guy or even 28-year-old guy with the obesity and you have low T and you want your quality of life to be better and you're on testosterone, and you really can't give a man to a transdermal gel or topical solution of any type. There are a variety of compounded types. When he has children, because the children are going to be on his shoulders, right. He's going to touch it. This is unethical. That's a black box. That's a black box warning from the Fed. People don't even, a lot of caregivers they're not aware of it. And it's just, they don't even ask, hey, do you have children at home? I mean, not to mention the fertility issue. So, okay. So the oral testosterone undecanate is there. What I'm thinking is for these guys, if they do it, they're going to have a state by state competitor. They're going to say, we got this figured out, Dr. O'Connor and Attorney Collins. We're doing brick and mortars. You're going to have your own. We're going to direct you. It's kind of like what we're doing to your state's caregiver, and you could see that person in person. It's in your state, or they're going to abide by the state laws. I mean, I'm kind of doing some work for these guys right now, right? I'm kind of helping these guys out right now. That's what they're going to do.
Sure.
It's the issue on the Fed stuff.
I think they've probably figured that already, and that this is going to be a network. They're going to create some sort of network that will allow for compliance with whatever, in person or, medical examinations need to be conducted. So,
it's going to be state by state.
And Vitamin Shoppe has a large reach, right? There's vitamin shops in, I would have to assume almost every state, right? So
they're going to do it. So, right, they're going to do that. Now, here's what looking to the Fed is: if you're in Michigan and you're getting testosterone and even some Deca or Anavar mailed to you, wink, from a clinic in Florida, and that doctor or that healthcare practitioner doesn't have a license in Michigan, that's where the Fed's going to stop it. You see this? So you see, that's where the Fed's going to stop, because they're going to say you got to. So the big groups, I'm kind of doing a little help. I'm helping out Vitamin Shoppe now. I mean, because it's like what's going to happen is they're just going to have huge networks. So the small guys this is where it's going to be interesting. Small guys are going to go down. Big guys like me and Vitamin Shoppe that have networks all over, we're just going to direct you to the state-related caregiver. Okay, it's not a doctor; it's a nurse practitioner, because the majority of America has enacted laws that you could prescribe controlled drugs without being a physician. A lot of people don't know that. Another thing a lot of people don't know is you can get, in most states, except for 4 currently, and that's going to probably be down to 3 or 2 soon, you can get labs with no doctor's prescription. I ask people this all the time. They're like, what? You don't? So this whole thing is going to come to a head. Here's the problem that I would say that you may not realize, or you probably do realize. The problem with the person's going to go to the clinic. They're going to get this clinic hooked up. They're going to get on, the undecanate, the oral. it may or may not. See, this is the problem. When they have that one caregiver, it's going to be interesting. Like the relationship with Vitamin Shop says, like, you're paying Vitamin Shop that pays the caregiver. Then now it gets squirrely, right? Not to mention there's some laws that have to be dealt with, but they have attorneys. And it's like, well, with Vitamin Shop, we're only giving you oral undecanoate. Come on. So most guys, I know this 100%, are going to be like, it's not working for me. I want to go to the injections, the microdosing. I want to go to enanthate, cypionate. I want to do a little probe. I want to go to a compounding plant. They're going to say, so for $200 or more, yeah, $200 a month, it's a lot of money. And it's like they're just giving oral testosterone. It's never going to be marketably sustainable. You need to go to a caregiver that's going to have various options. And not to mention the ABCDs with the heart, the prostate, and the red blood cell, because it has a black box warning for hypertension, which is kind of funny because all androgens can give hypertension and a hell of a lot more than hypertension. And patients are knowing that because of the Testosteronology app for the whole world, and they're aware of their health, and they're pushing back on their healthcare providers and saying, hey, I want a calcium score. Hey, help me with my blood pressure. Hey, don't just tell me to phlebotomize. I don't need to phlebotomize. I'm anemic and my iron levels are depleted. Or maybe I need a colonoscopy because I haven't had a colonoscopy and I'm losing blood in my GI tract. This is what we do. Okay. So I thought it was interesting.
You probably, and I know you know this too, and you know, when you talked about the black box warning, you know, that went on testosterone products in, what was it, 2018, something like that?
Right, 2016, 15, yeah.
So where it basically said, like, the risk of heart attack and stroke and all of those cardiac related issues, even though, and I'm sure you've looked at the data that was the basis for that warning, and you know the emperor's got no clothes there.
It was erroneous. It was erroneous. We know that.
Yeah. And yet it doesn't change, and so
now we have the Travers trial. We have Travers now,
right?
Travers.
Yeah, but the black box warning hasn't come off,
right.
So so you know, and that's problematic. I think, you know, because particularly in the last few years we've had maybe a diminishing of trust in the FDA for some of the decision making and advice that the FDA has given for the last few years. And so when you compound that with a warning that appears to be, you know, false, or at least unsupported in the overwhelming majority of men who would be using the product, for whom the product is actually cardioprotective, far more than
it's an embarrassment for our government. It's an embarrassment.
So this is problematic, and so, you know, I hope that at some point, you know, whoever leads that agency in the future, you know, rethinks some of the advice and position on testosterone.
Right. With the evidence that we have now, overwhelming, and like you said before, the market need is ginormous. It's just absolutely for men and women, because quality of life is everything, and there is a way to be protected as you manage and you move through this realm as an adult, not as a child, not as a teenager.
You know, it's funny, Doc, and maybe we can end with this. It's because it's topical as well. There was a recent article that came out. You may have seen it. I think I posted it also on my Instagram, which certainly people can come, and if you're interested in this topic and this general area of subject matter, Rick Collins ESQ on Instagram is a good place to kind of see what's going on. But there was a recent article, again, sort of a hit piece on testosterone in the context of, you know, infertility is a risk, and people are not being advised, or they don't know it. And, you know, to me, I think, and you would know your patient, you know, the patient base generally in this area, but I think the vast majority of men who are on testosterone therapy generally have either had their families or it's not the primary issue.
Right.
Fertility is not their biggest issue. And it's weird that, with birth control pills, we celebrate the female version
Right.
of birth control. And
Right.
yet when we look at it from a male contraceptive perspective, a drug that may have that effect, we're only seeing it in the negative way when the media presents it. So it's kind of an interesting issue. Sure, there's obviously there are fertility issues with taking an androgen, in the same way that there are biofeedback loops for your natural suppression of your natural testosterone. But to me, as long as a patient is fully advised, and obviously should be fully advised on that, but for a man in his 50s or 60s, I think it's sort of a red herring to make this the lead of the article.
And the young guy, well, it's the embarrassment, the continuation of the emperor's clothes. I mean, it's an embarrassment from the media standpoint that they're so negligent, they're so ignorant. It's just negligence now. It's an embarrassment. When I'm on Dr. Phil and these things, and I love Dr. Phil as an awesome man. I mean, I was amazed by this man. He's not an embarrassment. He's a brilliant man, but his team, and again, it's not their fault, but I get so irritated. I'm like, where have you been? Like, you're really, they're like shocked.
They're reading all the wrong sources of information.
And the government, and meanwhile, it's kind of like, there's a scrum on the side of the field, right? The rugby. And meanwhile, you're just running up the sideline, with just free. There's no one there. And it's like, hello, I'm over here. Just run. Everyone needs to understand, what the truth is about androgens from your social media. You're the attorney, obviously, with a legal standpoint, with my social media and my Testosteronology app. And then young men that are in their 20s that have been on and off steroids, the truth really is this. It's a lot of work, but I can get you fertile. I have like a 95%, 90%, maybe 90, 95% chance. I'm not saying it's not a lot of work, but it's a disclaimer. You know that we're going to have to work around this with like tons of HCG. You're going to come off testosterone, man. We're going to have to, you can't just take test and HCG and think it's going to work. It might work, but when it doesn't work, I don't play God. That's like the God up there, right? So it's like, the fertility. So it's like you stop it. You have to blast HCG. We have other tricks up our sleeve with clomiphene. We have FSH and LH analogs. If you have money, if you got money, there's no problem, basically. I mean, because these drugs are expensive. Well, but young men need to get the memo that, dude, don't do this if you don't want to live on testosterone forever. And maybe your wife's going to say, hey, I'm leaving your ass if we don't have a kid or another kid. And you're like, whoa, doc, I've seen tears, if not worse, right? Some suicides where it's like, they're off the stuff. They feel like shit, circling the drain, can't get erections, fertility's not coming back quick enough for the grace of God. And they are losing their lives because of the decision of starting androgens so young, without realizing, hey, you got to play with a lot of tools. We have a lot of drugs. And now the bro science guys love the drugs. And that's my world, right? I brought together this world, right, to the traditional medical world. Like, we love the drugs.
That's kind of my world too. From the legal and the medical, that's both of our worlds. But I think, maybe the way to wrap this up is to say that, you and I need to keep doing what we're doing. And that is kind of throwing out the right information into the public sphere so that it maybe to some extent counterbalances the nonsense that's coming from the mainstream media, even from some branches of the government, and to try to educate the public, to bring good information out there and honest and truthful information, because it's, look, no drug is risk-free. No drug is devoid of side effects. I think the issue isn't being an advocate for something or a critic of something. The issue is just getting out the truthful information out there
That's all
and
people
in a
want.
way that's honest, and supporting, as a former prosecutor and a criminal defense lawyer for many years, I believe in personal autonomy and personal responsibility, that people should accept the consequences of their actions, but also that they should have a certain level of autonomy and liberty to be able to make their own educated
Right.
decisions. And so let's just keep getting that good
I
information
love
out
it.
there, Doc.
Attorney Collins, I can't thank you enough. This is going to be really
I
a
love
great
it.
video.
Thank you for having me on, man.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you.